And this is the Incongruous channel, and I'm Dr. Andy Yates, and welcome to another rant that I might be having. Well, we'll see how it goes, because today I'm going to be talking about taxes. And really, the question I'm asking is, why do we need to pay them? What do we get in return for taxes? And I've made a list here, just to the side here, of some taxes that we pay, and I'm just going to kind of go through some of these. Income tax. Now, kind of like income tax. Okay, so we live in a country where we've hired a government to provide us with some things. We've got to give them some money to give us those things, so we pay income tax. Income tax generally is going to be about 20%, something like that, off our basic rate of pay taken off at source, which is like, okay, so we've paid for this stuff, haven't we? But the question is, why do we need to pay more tax? What do we get in return? Because for income tax, we get, I don't know, pensions, health, defense, the police, the fire, all those sort of things. Because for health, we also pay national insurance, national health insurance, which covers that side of things. I think that's another 13 or 14% on top. So, okay, we're fully paid up. We've paid our taxes, we've paid our income tax, we've paid our national health insurance. We should be all good to go. Everything's great, right? No, actually, no. Then there might be some other taxes. Now, there's one called capital gains tax, whereby money we make off the sale of something, for example, the government wants a piece of that. Well, what do we get in return for that? That's what I want to know. I mean, I'm not going to say it's wrong, but I'm going to say, okay, what do we get in return for capital gains tax? What do you, the government, give me back because I pay capital gains tax? Or is it just that you're collecting money? Is it just the way you pull the money in? Is that what it's all about? I mean, capital gains tax, there's all kinds of rules and stuff like this, and you can make allowances for different things and so on. So it's not quite as bad as it sounds, but really it's a heavy old tax that anything you make money on, basically, up to a limit, I think it's £12,000 or something like that, maybe. And anything you make more than that, you have to pay taxes on, something like that. It's like, okay, but why? What is this getting for me? Because if I went into a store and I paid a pound for something, I expect a pound's worth of goods, right? If I'm paying income tax and national health insurance, what am I getting now for my capital gains tax? What am I getting for this extra money that I'm paying? That's the deal. There's another one. Okay, if you're ever involved in buying a house, one of the things you'll know you have to pay is stamp duty. And basically you can't buy a house without paying stamp duty. But what even is stamp duty? I presume in the old days it was something like they would put a stamp on something or whatever. But why? Because Bill down the road wants to sell his house to me. He owns his house, he owns the land. I buy it for a certain price. It's his land, it's his house. Now it's my land, my house. Okay, I got to register it, but hey, you can do that online. How much would that cost? No stamp involved anymore. What am I paying this extra money for? For something like a £300,000 house, this could cost you £5,000, something like that. Why? And again, what do I get in return? Do you come round and paint a couple of rooms in my house or something, or dig the garden or something? No, I get nothing for that. What is it? I just keep throwing this money in there and allowing other people to spend that money for me, except they're not spending it the way I'd want them to spend it, like on nuclear weapons and stuff like that, right? Like on setting up trade deals with the United States so we can have poisoned food over here. I don't get it. I don't get it. There's another one, probably the biggest one for making money for the government, is value added tax, VAT, okay? And you may know that VAT works a slightly different way. So rather it coming off at source, it's taken off by a business. So if you go in and you want a service, you want to buy goods or whatever, there has to be VAT on. The business has to collect that VAT and then send it on to the government. Why? If it's not going to the business, so they're the ones providing the service, so they make a box, and that box costs £1, and I pay £1 for it. And now, because that manufacturer has paid his workers, has paid for the materials, has created that box, now I have to give 20 pence, 20%, to the government for that box that someone else made. Why? That's my question. And I'm just asking the question. I'm just asking you, what do you think about this? Why should I be paying this for something the government doesn't provide? Yes, they provide, pensions. Yes, they provide the National Health Service, all this kind of thing. But this box I'm buying, what do they provide? What do they give back to me? Nothing. Okay. So having paid income tax and having paid national health insurance and having paid VAT on goods that I have to buy and stuff like this, okay, so I'm done, right? No. No. If you live in a residence somewhere, you have to pay council tax. What is it? I've already paid the government. Now I'm paying a sub-department of the government for some of the same things I thought I'd paid for in the income tax. So yeah, I'm paying for the streets to be cleaned and stuff like this, but why isn't that covered in income tax? We have streets all over Britain. If you live in Britain, you pay income tax. Therefore, shouldn't it cover all these things? And with council tax, I suppose it's the same for income tax, you also pay people to collect the tax that you've got to pay. So I pay them tax, they have to pay tax, and that's for the money they take off me to pay the government for giving me something or nothing. And when you live in a county like Northamptonshire, where the county council doesn't do very well with their money, you got to wonder, this council tax I'm paying, am I really getting my money for it? There's supposed to be planning in there. And I live next to the Skewbridge roundabout, which is a planning nightmare. And I have to pay for this. Not only do I have to suffer waiting in queues at the roundabout every time, I also have to pay for the privilege of doing that because I have to pay another level of tax. Income tax, national health insurance, and now VAT on top of that. And does it end there? Well, at least I can go down the pub and have a pint, right? Oh, but that's tax too. Okay? I'm actually not sure if there's VAT on that, but I think there probably is. Wound in there by the business. But I also have to pay excise duty. What? That's like something out of the 16th century when they used to smuggle in rum from the Caribbean and places like this. Why am I paying excise duty? What even is that? On beer and wine and cider and spirits? Why do I have to pay this money? And I tell you something that really kind of winds me up. Because we're supposed to be this great country, 5th GDP in the world and all this kind of thing. Why do we pay more than most of the other countries in the European, except for one, I think, for things like a beer, right? On beer, a pint of beer, you pay 53 pence a pint, and that's old numbers. I'm not even sure. It may be more than that now. But here's the comparison, right? At that time, 53 pence on a pint of beer here in this country. In Germany and Spain, 4 pence. What? 4 pence. 4 pence on a pint of beer, and I have to pay 54 pence on a pint of beer. Why? Because it's nothing to do with the manufacture of the beer. It's nothing to do with the cost of the ingredients. It's nothing to do with the distribution. This is just a grab saying, hey, give me that money. I want my piece. Seriously, why when I hear politicians say we're one of the best countries in the world, Boris is going to make us the best country in the world, why should we pay more for a pint? And it's the same for wine, cider and all that sort of thing. Terrible prices. What's going on? What is that? I mean, in the UK, if you say that the average pint costs £3.33, I know it generally costs more than that nowadays, but again, these are older figures. But £3.33, the equivalent pint in Germany will cost you £2.30, and in Spain it'll cost you £1.75, half the price. How can that be possible? How can they manufacture beer and make a healthy profit and still pay a little tiny bit to the government for some reason? And then in our country, you have to pay all this amount of money more, double the price of the pint, same pint in Spain. It's absolutely incredible, especially when we live in a country where tax avoidance and tax sheltering are done on a regular basis. In fact, it's almost like this is one of the products we offer to the rest of the world. And we can't get rid of that at the moment. No, don't get me wrong, because 80% of our GDP is from services, and half of those services are financial. And because we're a Commonwealth, we've got all these tax havens dotted around the world, you know, like the Channel Islands, Jersey, places like that, like the Caribbean, places like the Cayman Isles, the British Virgin Isles, Bermuda, places like that, where foreign investors will go, register their company, and then they only have to pay what the local rate of tax is. And in some places, that's near to zero. So they'll earn their money in a country like the UK, but instead of paying the taxes for the roads and the defence and all these kind of things, no. Because they're registered in another country, they'll only pay the tax that's in that country. That seems a bit unfair, doesn't it? That we have to pay these things, and then we buy our goods from these big companies, and then they take that profit and shelter it out in a tax haven. And they keep it secret from the tax man, so the tax man doesn't even know it's there. It's not the tax man's fault. He doesn't even know the money exists, because they have privacy and secrecy, unless someone blows the whistle on them, as they did in the Paradise Papers, and then all these names come out and everybody's like, oh my God, look at this, you know. But what's been done to change it? Nothing. Because generally the people in charge, the people in power, what do they do with their money? Same thing. They get it offshore, they get it in the low rate for tax avoidance, that sort of thing. Tax avoidance is debatably legal, debatably not. There are companies that actually provide those facilities to do this. That's one of the things that the City of London provides, you know. Absolutely. The access to tax havens and the management of the money through tax havens. And if you've got 10 quid, well, it really ain't going to make any difference. But if you've got 10 million quid, it does make quite a difference, because that's a chunk of change you'll lose if you pay 20%, 40%, 45% tax when you could be paying 2% in a tax haven. You get the idea. Also, having paid all these levels of tax, there's a chance, if you've got some good money behind you, that you'll end up paying inheritance tax. Right? And that's 40%. Now, the levels are quite high, and it protects generally us common people, the working class, middle class, right? But if you earn more than that, boy, you're going to get slammed for inheritance tax. And my question is, why? Do you come and dig the grave? Do you put flowers on? Do you make sure it's maintained every few months? No. What are we paying that money for? Why should we pay that money? We seem to have got ourselves in a situation here that we just accept this kind of thing. Well, what can we do? They're going to take it from us anyway. But isn't it wrong? Shouldn't that money, if we're seeing value for that money, I guess we'd say, oh, that's okay. But as we've just come through, 10 years of austerity, where money is not being spent on public services and things like this, we're not seeing the value of that money that's gone in there, that's being grabbed from every different source we've got. So we can't have a pint, we can't even die without potentially being taxed. What else is there? Well, we could go for a drive in the car, couldn't we? Well, no. Because you've got to pay tax on that fuel. And that just seems to me that the whole country runs on fuel. Surely you'd get a break on that. Oh, no. We got to charge you tax on that. And here's something I feel quite strongly about. I'm absolutely in support of helping out the environment, in doing something about carbon emissions and stuff like this. But what exactly are we paying for when we have to pay for that? Like the big power stations and so on will pay a carbon tax through the EU at the moment, right? hospitals and big food plants and stuff like that, they pay a carbon tax. And when we leave the EU, we'll still pay that carbon tax, but we won't pay it to the EU, we'll pay it to the UK government, right? We won't get away with paying that tax. That won't be one of the savings we make. No. We've still got to keep paying it. But what's the what's the UK government going to do with that money to help offset carbon in the atmosphere? Nothing? I think so. Do you think the money will just go into the pot and be spent on something that you don't particularly want? Yeah, I reckon. Because it won't be used to scrape the carbon out of the atmosphere or build plants that might be able to do that or something like this. No, it'll just disappear. It's just another level of tax. And how long, because this has been suggested many times, before that carbon tax, that idea of a carbon footprint for every individual comes into force? How long? And how many people will get exceptions? Well, I'm a politician. I've got to get to London to run the country, so I don't have to pay carbon tax. But you're just a common person. Of course you've got to pay carbon tax. Think of all the carbon you generate. And then do nothing about this situation. That's the annoying part about it. And then we pay for things like a congestion charge in London. Okay, the financial burden might relieve some of the congestion, but you're not helping anyone by doing that, because you're just putting a financial burden on people. And are we stopping trucks going in there? Are we stopping planes going over the top? The big producers of these things? No, just us, the people. You've got to pay extra because of the congestion charge. And that congestion charge, could we trust that money is being used exclusively to try and do something about the problems in the atmosphere in London, for example? What do you think? Can we trust them to do that? Really? I don't know. Oh, and another one, just to finish off, is on-street parking. If we pay council tax, right, which is the tax we pay to live in a particular environment. So I pay council tax to Northamptonshire County Council, right? Why do I have to pay to park my car in Northamptonshire County? I've already paid a chunk of change, and it is quite a lot of money. I've already paid to the county council. How is it now they're going to say, well, you've paid us this tax, but we're also going to tax you on the car, and the car that you're driving that pays excise duty to the federal government because of the fuel? It just goes on, doesn't it? Layer upon layer upon layer of tax. And I simply ask you, what do you think? Do you get return for each of those levels of tax that you pay? Or has it just been ways that the government's been able to sneak in tax from here and tax from there, and you've got to pay here and you've got to pay there, in addition to the original income tax that you pay on your basic wage? Ugh. And the fact that other European countries charge less than we do, that's really sad, isn't it? And we're coming out of the EU, so any benefits we get from that, gone. We know that they're overcharging us for this stuff, and we're just gonna, that's what we got. I hope it works out well. I really do. Okay. Well, that's my little rant on taxes. Don't forget, my show is on www.beetrootradio.com. That's where I did the show. You can find the podcast on www.drandyyates.com to see the bottom of the screen. And that should be it. This is the Incongruous channel. I'm Dr. Andy Yates. And please, as always, take care.